Nicole. So you always were here last in the Hangout.
Still not up yet.
Repeat that real fast. We're now live.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So we'll start with introductions. Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a guest here. I'm just interested in helping out with docs, part of the TC.
And alphabetical, whosoever is up next after C.
Let's see here.
Is that me? I'll just start. I'm Jeremiah, FishRock123 on everything, and I'm part of the website working group and a collaborator on io.js. Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I go next. So I'm just a guest today, and I'm interested in working on documentation tooling, on the documentation tooling for Node and io.js in general, and that's it.
Hey, I'm Sean. We met Snowstorm. I'm on the working group.
All right. My name is Trent Oswald. I'm the Rebel Robot, and I'm the facilitator of the working group right now. Yeah. So really quick, let's go through what we were looking at last meeting. We didn't have a meeting last week because there weren't enough people that could attend, and so we pushed it off to today. Had that open here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Last week we covered governance, licensing, rules for contributing, the team structure, possibility of an evangelism team, discussing IRC, which we'll also be discussing today. So policies for closing and fixing issues and pull requests, helping users properly report website bugs. Also talked about build system and internationalization, dynamic release and downloads page, latest Semver links, blogs, announcements, feed for releases and announcements, and list of supporting hosts. So yeah, let's see here. Should we just hop straight into the agenda, or do we want to talk about what we've been working on?
We can do some quick updates if anyone has them before we jump into there. I have no updates.
I haven't done that much because I've mostly been distracted on core. So.
I've worked a little bit on the build process and getting the internationalization working through Gulp, and just starting to get the template moved over from the normal HTML into the new Markdown files that will be more easily maintained by contributors. Anyone else have any updates?
Trying to see if you all want to adopt the docs tooling as part of the project.
That's part of what's on today.
Cool.
This week's agenda.
Yeah.
And so.
That's part of what I've been doing the last 2 weeks. That's my update.
Cool. Cool. All right, then I think we should just hop straight into the agenda then. Let's take a look at the current status of the international process. We've got a separate branch currently in the repo called build/gulp.js. That's where I've been working. For the most part, it looks like that build process is running fine. We just need to move the HTML over to Markdown, like I was saying earlier. I know FishRock was looking into that, but you said you were working on core this week. Okay. So don't think there's much update on that, just that we need to do the grunt work to get it done. Social media, it looks like we got a couple issues on that open. With evangelism, working group, and sharing the love. What's the current status of that working group? Is that an official working group, the evangelism group, or is that part of the working, like the website working group as of right now? Does anyone know?
I think it's part of the website for now until they have enough people. I think that's what Michael was saying.
Okay. And what's the current status of that? Have we distributed the admins the way that they need to for updating the Facebook, Twitter, and all that?
I think he was going to be shepherding that a bit, so without him here, it might be hard to get an update on moving that more towards an independent effort.
Okay. Then we'll I guess we'll table that for now until we can talk with Michael more on that.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of discussion since on just trying to find like the volunteers and that sort of thing, but I don't think we've had too many people jump in yet, just a few. So there's some talk about internationalization or internationalizing our communication efforts and stuff through that group as well, but it's probably a little premature.
All right. 2 seconds, just opening, just updating the doc real fast. All right. Another issue that we're looking at here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure why I tagged this as agenda, because this doesn't look like it needs to be discussed here.
The build or the README one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one is also on hold. We probably don't need to publish anything until the build process is done. That can all come in together on one PR.
Well, that sounds like it's mostly stuff that Build has been working on, like the fact that Build hosts our Nginx config, right?
You better sell that. Butterfield?
All right. Moving on, we've got the stability, helping users test io.js and describing it as unstable. What was the final consensus on that issue where we were describing it as unstable on the main site?
Well, we made an update where it's, I think, no longer saying unstable. I'm still in favor of some sort of disclaimer at this early stage, but I know that that's various degrees of controversy around how we label it. I don't know if it's really a finished issue.
So TC suggested that we don't label it as unstable, because it's API stable, basically.
Okay. Then, so long as we're all okay with that, let's go ahead and close those issues then.
I think the only thing that maybe is still a bit of a question is how we, I mean, at some point we're going to deal with an unstable and stable line, and that's fine. That's probably outside of the scope of this, but I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that still really doesn't work if you just install io.js. If you just go and take the installer and you stomp over your existing node install, a lot of stuff just breaks still. For example, if you're using the Ember CLI tools, or a lot of things like Node SAS that require compiled dependencies, those aren't working great right now, and I don't know, there's sort of a trade-off between, it's sort of the same issue you have if you jump between Node 11 and 12. I mean, that's not a specific io.js thing, but I think maybe some documentation or guidance for users might just be helpful.
So on that note, I think that basically can be shelved as the issue that we want to write up a doc about, like how to install io.js and like a version manager and make sure you don't break everything under the sun, because like it's definitely not like that. You'd have about the same thing going from 0.8 to 0.10, and those are both stable. And honestly, io.js at this point is quite stable already, even not considering API stability. So
that's true. We kind of need to figure out what the line between, because this is a major change from, say, 0.10, we have to figure out what we mean by unstable. Do we mean API changes or something that is like broken? Because that's generally what unstable denotes, is that something that should be working is not necessarily that previous functionality has been removed.
at the same time, a lot of people in Node.js land see it as unstable being like API instability, and stuff will change, and that gets a little bit confused.
Yeah, and so and this may be a better conversation for the TC. What constitutes instability on, when we're actually publishing the binaries themselves.
So I think this TC considers it basically stable, except just don't use it in production until like the next V8 rolls through and we're actually using a stable V8, and that's where stuff's going to be, like stable or production ready or whatever.
Okay.
So pseudo-stable? Like,
yeah,
I mean, we need a new word.
In reality, it really is already stable.
But if you just go to install it on your production server, you easily could have a ton of stuff break. Like, I have several projects where I was like, sweet, I can substitute io.js, and I just spent so much time working around all the native package stuff.
It's not API stability, and it's not like its actual bugginess. It's just the fact that stuff needs to be updated because C++ can't run with it. Stuff needs to be recompiled, etc.
Yeah.
So maybe we could put a disclaimer on there that it's not production ready yet, or that there are things that we need to that there are things that need to be resolved before it can be released on a production server.
So how do we get that point across really fast on the homepage without scaring people with an unstable label, but also not writing a whole paragraph?
That's the problem that we need to address, unfortunately.
In one of the threads I did, and I don't know if I like this necessarily, but I threw the suggestion out there of essentially prepping how we would organize stable and unstable one day to let people know sort of this thing we would label as stable is coming out soon, but it's currently, almost the release candidate for what we consider stable. Release candidate? I don't know. It's kind of a very Microsoft-y term.
The only thing with that is that TC still hasn't fully decided how they're doing their entire thing. I don't know if Chris has an update on that. He might, since he's kind of leading it.
I'm going to be doing a release today to kind of figure out where the build system is at, and then I will probably revise my current suggestion. The current thinking on that, at least from my perspective, and I'm trying to sell others on it, is that we'll have a train system with a dev, canary, and stable line. So I would recommend against on the website labeling things as RCs or stable or not stable, but labeling things as RCs or dev or beta, because those will have specific meaning within the build system eventually.
Yeah, maybe
so for me, if we're using that train terminology, picking what's the second one, beta?
The series are dev, canary, and stable.
Okay, so maybe we could, I don't know, again, we could pick a term we know is coming, so dev, it's not really canary. What we have now is sort of what we promote to stable in a few weeks. It gives authors some more time to fix upstream dependencies. I know it hasn't been decided yet, though, 100%,
yeah.
So that...
Yeah, I'm a little worried about going forward with that, given that it hasn't been decided. I I don't know. So from the perspective of io.js itself, io.js is stable. It's that we've dropped a major version update, and the ecosystem is still catching up to it, so to speak. Like binary add-ons have to be recompiled or made to work, etc. So it's kind of a common problem of a node upgrade, but a little bit worse than usual because it's been about 2 or 3 years since all this code got released. So I'm not sure how to message that, but that's it's got rough edges with what you're used to working with right now, but the actual code base is considered stable.
And maybe we can put an asterisk on it. We could put stable on it and then put asterisk and link that to an FAQ, the FAQ page, specifically describing the issues that we're talking about, how the release itself is stable, but that the community has not yet caught up with it, and that there are some things that are still broken because of it.
I think we should just have a Node to io.js guide link there, basically, where it's set unstable.
So you're saying maybe have a link that says migrating from Node or upgrading from Node ?
Basically.
I actually kind of like that.
Because that's gonna it gives the point across the most. It's not unstable, and then we can explain it in detail and have some version manager description things there, whatever.
I'm just guessed, but what we did on Couchdb 2.0, which isn't released yet, we basically created a page which is called Couchdb Developer Preview 2.0, which is not an official release. I'm not sure it makes sense for you at all, because I'm just a guest in this working group today, but I just wanted to share that knowledge from a bit different project.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris in chat, just because the chat won't make it into the recording, just listed a what to expect kind of headline we could use in that article or as the name of the article or subtitle or something. I think that makes sense. I think maybe the guide, this upgrading, running iOS guide is probably the best place to start. It might be a good catch-all for some other issues we have, which is how do I install io.js and manage different versions, and maybe that all ties together in sort of a getting started /upgrading guide. Maybe later to be split once the project gets a couple months older.
Okay. So let's see about getting do we want to put that in the FAQ page itself, or do we want a separate page altogether for it?
I think we should just go for a new page because we have a lot there.
Okay. Then let's see about getting that implemented this week. I'll have, for the most part, most of the pages moved over to the Markdown within the next few days. And so we can just start adding new Markdown files for these additional pages, and we'll be able to add that new one really easily at that point. And so, cool. If everyone's cool with that, then let's move on to device and browser coverage. We had a pull request come in this last week that was specifically trying to address an Internet Explorer 7 and 8 issue, making it more standard so that it would be better for those browsers. And I think one thing that we need to do is define kind of the scope of what we're doing with this website. What devices are we targeting, what browsers are we targeting, and how many versions back we're going to test. And anything beyond that's kind of if it works, it works. If it doesn't, tough luck kind of thing.
So at very least, we should target browsers that are not broken, as in not Internet 7 and 6 and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I think 8 is a reasonable minimum, but for 8 and 9, it would be you can access things like a download link and have it not look terribly broken, but it might not look as pretty or polished. I mean, we shouldn't try to sabotage those browsers, and I think we should, gracefully have it work on more limited devices. My rule of thumb would be if it can run io.js, it should be able to run the io.js website, but it doesn't necessarily have to look pretty. It just has to get you to the download.
Okay.
You're on some embedded ARM browser somewhere that you just need to download the project, you can get there.
Some of the biggest issues that we'll run into when we start handling specifically Internet Explorer 8 is a lot of the CSS rules end up changing. Most of what most front-end developers use nowadays won't necessarily work in Internet Explorer 8, and so we may want to address. I've got a couple ideas that I can do a pull request for that will kind of switch out style sheets based on if it's a lower end browser or whatnot, hiding the things that we don't want shown or whatever. And so that's something I can take a look at this week as well.
Yeah, I think we should try to avoid, try maybe to do a little bit of.
I think he might have DC'd.
Yeah, it looks like he froze out there. Okay. Not exactly sure.
Sorry, I dropped out. You guys have me back? Yeah. I could tell you guys all froze. Anyway, I think we should do a little bit of work at the beginning, and then, know it falls back into a navigatable state, so it's not just completely kaboom, broken, but beyond that, I don't think we should, go out of our way to regularly, test it, and if users have some PR requests to, change all of the CSS we're using elsewhere, just to make it look nice on i8, and it, ends up overcomplicating our CSS or our DOM structure, then I think we reject those sort of PRs, because they're just going to cause us a lot of maintenance down the line.
Yeah.
So I'd be in favor of not supporting Internet Explorer 8, except that it seems like we have a large portion of downloads that are from Windows XP in China. I'm not sure what the status on that was from Rod. So also something to consider is that I'm not sure how long io.js is going to end up supporting Windows 8 Windows XP, and the reason for that is I think Chrome's dropping support for it soon, and V8 is possibly going to shelve support for it then too, and then it just won't work on those anyways. I don't know. Chris might know more, but
so one point of curiosity there. I don't think so. We've never actually had a compatibility matrix for Node, which has carried on into io.js, and we probably should. But I've not been able to get a good answer out of most people for whether or not Node supports XP officially. I think some tests actually break on XP, so it's supported, but in sort of a gray area. 7 is probably the lowest that we actually support.
Well, then I think that's a good strategy for the website too. We won't go out of our way to support it. It should mostly work.
Okay.
Yeah, we can target for Internet Explorer side, Internet Explorer 9 then, and just make sure it doesn't horribly break on Internet Explorer 8, I suppose. The only other I think real browser issue would be older Android browsers. A lot of which fall into i6-7 category actually and are just flat out broken.
Mm-hmm. Now that being said, we should also in our CSS be building with mobility in mind, and so any changes that we make large scale, we should probably be testing on at least a couple mobile devices before we upload it, just to make sure that it looks good on smaller screens. For the most part, Chrome's emulation should do a good job at tackling that. But
it's all right, but I wouldn't trust it.
yeah, but at least for me, I've got a Nexus 6 I can test on, and I can get a hold of an iOS device like an iPod to test on. I would say as long as you test it on one Android and one on one Apple, you should be good to go. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think?
Seems reasonable.
Most of the time, so long as you're being careful with the other things, and like we need to keep obviously Internet Explorer level 9 level stuff in mind, anyways. It should work so long as the CSS can display it for the screen width. There's not too much in terms of like browser compatibility unless you're looking at much older versions of Android browsers.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, this would mostly apply for doing like larger layout changes or a fancy page like the home page, how to download, link box structures. I mean, that's the sort of stuff that'll be, I don't know, maybe suddenly doesn't look good if you add more text to that box or something on a smaller screen. Now that we have the build process basically in place, once we have a guides template, once we have, other sub-templates in the site, those should be pretty standard to whatever markdown's getting thrown in there. I mean, if you're writing a new article, I doubt that needs to be tested on mobile, but if we're redesigning the header or the homepage or something else fancy, then I think it matters.
Yeah, and I would say that any copy changes, like anything in a markdown, doesn't necessarily need to be tested for cross-browser and like cross-device. Yeah, but any template stuff, I would want to at least test in Chrome emulation and one in real-life device before pushing.
So we have a consensus, I think?
Yeah, I think so. The only thing that I would like to say if we're going to support this stuff is I would like to avoid floats when possible. I think
Avoid floats?
Yeah. So like float left, right? Because it just it's a lot. It gets pretty confusing to work with if you have a lot of them.
That's basically why I rejected that earlier I8 request. I was like, no.
What you can do, I think Calc actually works on everything we're targeting. Let me double check.
Yeah. As does Flexbox on all of our evergreens.
Flex does not support.
I guess i9.
Support Flex, but we can use Calc on everything. So if you don't know how to use that, talk to me.
I don't know if we need. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. Did we decide on i9? Because if the actual market share on 9 is quite small. It was mostly stomped by 10 users at this point. So you're either stuck back in 8 or you're on 10 from my experience.
Yeah. And
especially if it's the 2 versions back, right? Like we have 10 and 11 plus, 12 is on the horizon.
Yeah. What I would suggest doing is 2 versions back in what we're like building core with a fallback to 8 with a not necessarily graceful but a readable fallback to 8. I think that should cover the majority of the use cases that we're looking at. Did everyone freeze?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. If we're cool with that, then let's nail down that scope then as what we're actually working towards, and then we can keep
Chris disconnected again. Sorry, scene.
Okay. Someone disconnected. Okay, it looks like we're all still here. Okay, cool. Moving on then, we've got the API documentation that I guess we're merging with the docs working group. Is that?
So there is no docs working group yet.
Okay.
So to kind of give you an idea of the state of things, right now, and for pretty much all of time, as far as like io.js is concerned, The docs have been built with a tool that it lives inside of the io.js repository, and it works by using an old version of Marked and pulling out interesting content using the lexer and parser parts of that, and decorating it, and it takes one file in and outputs one file into the target directory. So it's a one-to-one mapping. It has a couple of like overrided directives, like include, that are like strictly additive. And so what I was kind of hoping to do originally was split that doc tool out and make it its own thing. Make it make that tool responsible for generating all the output of the docs instead of doing a one file to one output mapping. And that was to be the start of the docs team. One of the things that I sort of discovered along the way here is that there's a lot of other tools out there that already do stuff like this, and really a documentation team should be more about writing the docs, maintaining the docs, having proper like style around how they edit the docs, and reviewing stuff that comes in, not necessarily like working on the actual tooling itself. And it sounds like y'all are working on sort of the same sort of problems where you want to have different translations up, you want to generate HTML, you are taking in input from another project, at least one other project like build, and displaying it on the website. And all the branding should be consistent across both of these places. So that's kind of where I'm looking to kind of sell you guys on the feasibility of taking on the docs tool and building out the documentation for that, whether that be like as it exists right now, or if you have another off-the-shelf tool that you'd like to use, or if you wanted to switch to something like ASCII doc, or if you're really kind of a glutton for punishment, something like Sphinx or restructured text, like anything would be on the table. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm looking at it from right now.
And
go ahead, Robert.
okay, so and I just noticed that we, Chris and me, basically did the same Git subtree split on Node and io.js, and that the two doc tools basically just start to diverge from each other. But it would be cool to have them joined again, I think. And in the long term, I also see a lot of I also would like to have basically a tool like the Python community has, which is universally usable for IO and Node projects, which generates documentation which looks like the Node or io.js documentation. I think Python has something like that.
Yeah, Sphinx or readthedocs.org is a good place to look for that. I'll put that in the meeting notes as well.
Cool. Just as a reminder, anything, if you want to add anything to the notes, any of the people that are here, feel free to do so. I'll leave the doc open and available probably for another 12 hours if anyone wants to review this meeting and add notes as they please.
Cool. So it basically for me boils down to I have a lot of feels about the documentation, but not maybe a lot of time to work on it, and I could help out. Robert's done some great work on his side with the doc tool, including fixing some really like horrible fix me comments in my version of it. I would like to see it either become something that, like Robert said, like a tool that's standard for the community to use to build good documentation, or if we're not if we don't have the time to invest in that, we pick up a tool and we sort of like bless it with like this is what we use.
Yeah. Then let's create a new issue then for docs tooling and see what's available, if we want to make a new one for it, or if we want to give it the io.js blessing.
Cool. Is the website team in general in agreement that y'all want to own this?
Yeah, I think that it makes sense to have it all together, especially just if anything for consistency of branding. Like they'll all look like one site. It'll have the same look, the same feel. Allows us to develop a guide section, which is one thing I'm really interested in getting the ball rolling on. So to complement the API docs and allow for cross-linking and stuff, it should just be so much simpler. We have those tie-ins.
Awesome. Cool.
So cool. Then looks like the last issue we've got, there's been a large thread on discussion between IRC versus Gitter versus Slack, and it looks like there is some disparity between what the core and like the main contributors are using, which is the IRC channel, and what new users are freely able to join. We've got a few different pull requests in, one for scrollback, which is a kind of an IRC client, but it's super user-friendly like Slack. And then we've got a few people that are pushing hard to go back to Slack or over to Gitter. I wanted to bring it up here and see what the consensus is here and kind of just decide it once and for all and have that be our final say on it and keep moving from there. What are you guys thinking on this issue?
So our Freenode IRC channels are basically not going to die no matter what we do about it, unless I like lock the channel into no voice mode, which I don't really want to do.
That's fair. And so then the question comes between, do we want to split the user base between IRC and something like Slack, or do we want to provide a user interface to the IRC channel?
I think adding more channels overcomplicates things. I know there's sort of this argument that, for newer users or for accessibility, we should, make some easy alternative to IRC. But I mean, at the end of the day, there are naturally going to be other communication channels anyway. You're going to have Stack Overflow threads. You're going to have Google Plus communities. There's lots of, I think, ways that outside of the IRC world that the community can be engaged, and probably 2 chat rooms will just be confusing. IRC's been around a long time, like email, and though it's not the most user-friendly for everyone.
No, but it makes sense to try and keep them all in one area. So let's take a look and see. I know there's scroll back, and while I enjoy the UI of it, and I like the kind of grouping of the messages that they're doing, I've seen issues with it updating regularly. We may want to see about maybe self-hosting that, or see if there's another client that we can use rather than the Freenode one, because I think the general consensus is that the Freenode web client is less than adequate.
Like, the Freenode web client functionally works, but it's not really that usable. So.
Okay. Yeah, and
it looks awful.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I liked about Scrollback, was that it provided more of a Slack feel to the interface, and that's why I think it might be a good idea to either see if any issues can be resolved on the scrollback site itself, or grab their source code and host it ourselves to make sure that it's all up and running properly. Or see if there's another service that does something similar to scrollback and go with that. Again, I'm not married to that specific project.
Would it be possible to set up sort of an IRC mentorship thing where if people are interested in getting on but they maybe don't, like, we provide the default kind of Freenode IRC client link, but we say if you want to get on IRC on a more permanent basis, here's an email, just talk to these people and they'll get you started with IRC or WeChat or, IRC Cloud.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even I don't have a persistent IRC connection, so.
I mean, like ZNC isn't too horrible to set up, or even like it's a matter of either having a server or IRC Cloud is a good way to go if that's not available. So.
And on Linux, I'm using Smooksy. It's a weird name, but that's the one that I've been using, and it works really well. I like the idea of having a mentor group, but I wonder who would be able to spare the time to be able to do that. Maybe having an IRC like guide, maybe part of the guide section.
I think there was an issue on that. That's probably a good idea anyways.
Yeah, there's that third-party site that's like, I don't know what it's called, chatting about node.com.
Node.js. I did send pull requests to Node.js, and we are on there, and our channel does link there, and that also links back to our channel.
Yeah, because I think what we could do if we want to improve that documentation is we can submit PRs upstream to them and do some cross-linking, and I mean maybe that's something we can help them evolve over time too in terms of the mentoring and education and recommended clients and all that stuff. I don't know. I think this is maybe a slightly premature problem too. Like the community is not so huge at this point. Like it is because it's the Node.js community, but it's also not because the project itself is quite young.
And I also want to. I think it's a little outside of the scope of our group altogether. I would like to point them in good directions or give them a good alternative, but I don't necessarily think we should become IRC teachers ourselves. And so, we want to hit a happy balance between providing them the guides they need, providing them a user interface if they don't want to do that, but then saying, hey, IRC is used across the board. If you don't want to deal with it, don't deal with it, kind of thing.
And in the same article or whatever it is, we can link to Stack Overflow. We can link to whatever other communities are kind of active at the time.
Yeah, and that might be a good bet. Do you think that should be its own page, or should we put that in the FAQ?
Eventually, when we have a guide section, it would be nice to have an article that's where can I go for help or to collaborate, or so it might even appear a few times in the project. It might appear there. It might appear under a contributor guide.
Okay.
I'm not too concerned about it this early on, really.
That's fair. But are we at least in a consensus that Slack and Gitter are off the table, that we want to stick with IRC? Okay. Then I'll go through today and I'll find anything having to do with that and update the issues in regards to that, and make sure everyone's on the same page with where we're going with the chatting. So
I'll send a poll to Core to remove the link to Gitter that they currently have and see what we can do there, because that's going to be misdirecting people. It basically is anyways, because I think there's like 40 people in the Gitter channel, and it's active, not active. I'm not really sure. I don't check it often.
Well, we'll need to let that Gitter know that if they continue using it, it's on their own. It's not necessarily going to be officially promoted. And so if they want to continue using it, they can, because I think Gitter is available for any repo. but they won't necessarily find any core contributors there.
Well, that's been the main issue anyways, is that basically none of our core contributors are there, and then we have the 300 people that aren't even core contributors that are in our IRC, and lots of them participate anyways, so.
Yeah. And so, okay. Does anyone else have any other issues that they want to discuss in this meeting? I think we covered everything pretty solidly, and looks like we're just barely in time too. But if anyone has anything else, now's the time to speak up.
The one thing I like to maybe leave these on is the sort of next actions. If some of us are running off to do things in the next week or until the next meeting, kind of what we're taking on.
Okay.
So maybe we'll just go through, and maybe we'll have our docs guests start in first and kind of discuss what the next actions are, just to summarize, and then we'll work our way through build process and etc.
Cool. So I've added the doc-tool repo to the website team. So you all have push and pull access to that now. I think next steps there are to probably open up an issue on io.js proper and figure out how we want to redo the makefile thing, so that when we do make doc, it calls the new tool, how we get that vendored in. So we can just open up an issue, or I can open up an issue on io.js and get that conversation started.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan on that. I'm going to be working on more of the build process, making sure that the templates are moved over properly and that everything is up to date and ready to merge into master for that, so that we can start getting it deployed. So yeah, that's what I'll be working on. Also, contributing into the docs tooling issues.
I will also continue working on the existing doc tools, and I would be quite happy. I think I don't have a counting vote or something like that, but I would be happy if we can, or if you can get to a conclusion if you want to use the doc tool, because if I remember right, you mentioned that you probably don't want to use it at all, or at least think about it. And yeah, that would be quite interesting for me.
I think maybe we're at a think about it stage in terms of how all the tooling will work together. I mean, even the build process for the website project that's getting merged in right now is pretty new and flexible. So tying Gulp into something that runs the doc build script or having them work together shouldn't be that difficult. But I would have to just look more into the tooling myself. I can't even speak to it because I haven't really looked at it ever. So, but I mean, once we have that issue and kind of a proposal, or somebody knows how they want it to all work together, then I feel like I'll be more able to review and inform. I'm overall for having it all just magically work together, however that happens in the end.
Yeah, and I think that's the only consensus we came to in this meeting today. We haven't decided on what tooling we want to use or reject or anything like that. We just basically came to the conclusion that we're gonna start taking it on. We'll open a specific issue for documentation tooling, and we'll continue this discussion on that, and we'll come together in the next meeting and see where that's at.
And if you guys or whoever else are going to be regular contributors, especially to the working group on doc-related matters. We should figure out however it is we like add people to the working group. I think it's just sort of a consensus thing. It's not overly formalized. If you're helping a lot, you're in, I think. So
Yeah, for the most part.
yeah, there's no like voting and stuff.
It's consensus seeking, just like core. So
yeah, so we can expand that bubble, which is I think always been the plan anyway. So especially if we're encompassing that. So Robert, you don't have to be like, well, if I had a vote.
Yeah, you already have a vote, so no worries on that.
On my end, I guess quickly, I'm still kind of like traveling, like not settled in my normal location. I should have a little more time in the next week. Maybe I'll just try to be a little more active on PRs coming in and just keeping an eye on those sort of things that come through. Once the build process gets merged in, I'm going to start thinking about how that's going to work with a docs like sub-template, or how we're going to organize the documentation section, because we already have a few tickets open for proposed articles, and it'd be nice to just, even if they're in like a draft stage in the repo, to get the ball rolling on that. So that's maybe what I'll take under my wing for now.
yeah, I'll probably look at the build a little bit and see if I can get any guide stuff done. I have a guide I also need to pull into core about committing, and I'll try not to get too distracted on core.
To be fair, core does take precedent over website, well, in my opinion, but that's just me.
Oh, and
right.
I'll also take a look at the entire website compatibility thing, and I think we're using Flexbox right now for the header part, so I'll see what I can do there.
Okay. And Jeremiah, I'll probably want to get together with you later this week. The majority of the work that I've always done in CSS does use floats, and so I do want to check. I want to talk with you and see kind of a different way of going about that. So we'll chat. We'll get that rolling. But yeah, I think that's everyone. Did everyone get a chance to talk real fast? Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks everyone for tuning in if you're watching us over YouTube. And feel free to open any issues that you want on io.js/website, and we'll see about talking with you on that. Cool. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. See you.